Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing great. This year went by really quickly. So 2024 is coming to an end very soon and I can't believe it. But yeah, anyways, I am filming my 2024 wrap up right now, which is essentially everything that I've read throughout the year. So if you're only interested in knowing about whatever I read and what I liked, what I did not, then you can straight away skip to the timestamp I'll be mentioning over here. And if not, then you're more than welcome to join me in the introduction. And I don't know why I said introduction completely. I could have said intro. But anyways, okay. So I know I've not been very active on YouTube this year. There have not been many videos, a few shorts here and there, and I did a blog. Okay, I had two blogs this year. One of them was the book fair blog, and the other was a travel vlog, which is my first, by the way. So if you've not watched it, I'll leave a link and I'll mention it here on the screen. So go ahead, watch it. Let me know if you like it or not. But yeah, other than that, I've not been doing long format videos. And this is because both the first half and the second half of my year have been very busy. So the first half of the year went by because I was very occupied with my final exams of my post graduation, and now that's done. I post graduated, yay. And the second half has been busy because I have a very special person in my life now, which is my very adorable niece. Yes, I have a niece now, and she's been keeping me busy, and I have no qualms about it. I am volunteering to be busy with her. I just love spending my time with her. She is the light of my life. So yeah, instead of reading and making videos about it, I've been trying to spend time with her. But I thought, before the year comes to an end, let's do an update. I've been reading some books here and there, and I do post updates on Instagram about it. If you are not following me over there, you can. I'll be mentioning my Insta ID over the screen and the link to follow me in the description as well. So yeah, that was a little bit of a lengthy intro. Now let's finally get to the wrap up. So 2024 was not really a very good reading year for me, not just because I did not read many books. I think I'm past the phase where I used to think that reading a lot was important. I do want to read good quality books now. And 2024 was a little bit disappointing in those terms because I read quite a few popular books, so my expectations were high and I got really disappointed in most of the cases. But I did read a few good books here and there. So yeah, I'm going to discuss all of them with you in no particular order. Anything that I can just grab. So let us begin with one of my most favorite reads of the year, which is The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. This was the Pulitzer Prize winner, and I've been, wanting to read it for a very long time. It has been sitting on my shelf since very long. I finally picked it up this year and I absolutely loved it. 100% recommend, especially if you're like me and you like reading about diaspora literature is something you're interested in, then this is a book you would enjoy. So in short, it's basically about two things. First of all, the generation gap we feel with our parents and they feel with us, and how until and unless we grow up into adults, we come to an age of being parents ourselves, we do not understand the choices of our parents, and sometimes by the time we understand them, it's too late. Another thing that it explores is how first generation Indians in America and second generation Indians in America are just two totally different types of people. So one of my most favorite lines from the book was that so there's this guy and his parents migrated to America as young adults, and then they got married there and everything, so their upbringing was in India. But this person, he grows up in America, right? But he's an Indian, so he has Indian origins, but he's been born and brought up in America. And one of the lines says that just like the American people, India was not Desh for him. India was just India, just another country. And I think this line beautifully sums up the entire book. They kind of connect the first generation Indians can feel with their homeland, and how it's absolutely not possible for the second generation kids to feel that, and it's not a fault of theirs, right? They've not been in the country that much. They just go there as tourists, so how can they feel that bonding with the country? So this is just the crux of the book that I'm telling you, but it's absolutely worth reading. Both these things, the generation gap as well as the whole diaspora thing, is absolutely enjoyable. Okay, so the other book that I read this year is a play which is by T.S. Eliot, a very, very renowned author, known mostly for his poetry. So I read a play by him for the very first time, Murder in the Cathedral. This is something I would not generally pick up given what my choices are, but I had to because it was a prescribed reading in my post graduation. The play is, basically about religion, particularly about Christianity. Not very interesting, to be honest. Not for me. If you're someone who actually loves exploring religious issues, or Christianity specifically, then maybe you can go for it. But it was absolutely not my cup of tea. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to share with you was again a prescribed reading for my MA course, but it took me back to my childhood, which is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, an absolute classic. It's a children's book, but it was so interesting to read it as an adult, and to see how we read it differently as adults. As kids, it was just another fantasy world for us, and so just a magical world and magical things are happening. But as adults, and how we were taught to analyze it differently as students of MA literature, it was really interesting to explore. And how actually this is not just a children's book. It has absolutely deep and profound meanings about human life, and obviously it's also then rooted in its own time and place and all that jazz. But it took me back to my childhood, especially because I remember story time, little bit of a story time if you don't mind. I was in school, and we had our library period, and we would go there and there would be books on the table. You could choose one of them and just read. Okay, so I picked up Wizard of Oz one day and I was reading it. Then the period ended, I had to leave it there. The next week I came, it was there. So I picked it up. I remembered where I'd stopped. I picked it up again. And it really, really caught my interest at that time. Again, the period ended. I left it midway. The next time I came there, it was not on the table. And I couldn't find it anywhere in the library. And at that time, it was not very common to order books online. I don't even know if I knew about Amazon, Flipkart, all those things. There were no bookstores near me where I could go find it. And it absolutely broke my heart that there was a story I was loving so much and now I cannot read it. So yeah, now finally I did read it. In terms of if I recommend it or not, if you like fantasy books and just children's literature, then yeah, yes, you can read it. It's interesting. At one point it does get a little bit repetitive, but if you can bear with that, then go ahead. Okay, another book is one of the first which I from this year, which I picked up because bookstagrammers were raving about it, and I thought I had to read it, and also because of its title, which is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. Now, if a book is set up in a bookstore, I had to pick it up because honestly, this is a dream of mine. I can absolutely live in a bookstore. You lock me up in a cozy bookstore, I can spend my whole life there. So I wanted to pick it up, and I read the blurb and I thought it will be a very cozy, fun read. So it's about this girl, she has a breakup. So she goes through a breakup. Basically, her partner cheats on her and she's in a very poor state of mind. And then, her uncle invites her to, handle his small bookshop with him in another town. And then she starts living there as well amidst books, and everything was fine till here. Then she, her healing journey starts. And there's this another subplot about the uncle and his estranged wife and all those things. Everything was actually okay in the book. My problem with the book was that I wanted to know more. I think it could have been more deep. There could have been more depth in the story. I wanted to know more about everything. Every time one particular thing caught my attention, The moment I wanted to delve deeper into it, it ended. So yeah, that was my problem with it. I wanted more out of the book and I did not get it. I felt that it had a lot of potential, but it stopped at a very shallow level. I know a lot of people will not agree with me, which is fine. We all have our opinions, but I don't think, yeah, it's worth the hype that it's getting. Not a bad book, but definitely not the best out there. And I also know it has a sequel, and I actually thought, I'd be reading it, but I don't think so. Okay, let's come to the next one, and I'm not going to tell you what the book is about because I'm pretty sure even if you've not read it, by now you have an idea about the story. So I'm talking about It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. My god, okay, so I know the world and Bookstagram and everyone is divided into two halves about Colleen Hoover. One who absolutely, have to read each and every release by her, and the others are probably like me. I had a little bit of an idea what kind of books Colleen Hoover writes, and if you like it, okay, great. But that's not something I like to read, okay? And that's why I never picked it up. But she is literally everywhere. She's in every bookstore. She's in every bookstall. Every smallest book vendor will have Colleen Hoover books, and then she is everywhere on Bookstagram. And then there was a movie being made on It Ends With Us, and I was like, okay, I should not be judging a book before reading it or judging an author before reading her. And I picked up It Ends With Us, and oh my god, I have no idea why people are liking it. Yes, it deals with a sensitive issue, domestic violence. I don't think it deals with it in a very good way. The story feels very forced from the very beginning. It feels not real at all. So I could never connect with Lily. I could never understand her decisions. I just absolutely, I dislike this book a lot. Let's just say that, because I don't want to use a stronger word, but it was an utter waste of my time. Okay, so the other one is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Again, I had my eye on it since a very, very long time. I had very high expectations. It came very close to fulfilling them, but then it did not. So it's basically a science fiction. It's set somewhere in the future. So there's a society, and where women who are fertile, fertile women are in demand because fertility has become a problem in the society, and people want children. So women are being enrolled and sent to the houses of rich men, even married men, to go and create babies with them, give them babies. And once she gives a baby to one man, she is then appointed for another man. And what I liked about this book was how it shows how women's identities were totally stripped off. So for example, there's a guy named Fred, and a woman is given to him to make babies with him. She would be stripped of her name. Let's just suppose that her name, before everything in the world happened, let's say her name was Rose, but now her name would be of Fred. So that she belongs to Fred. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, and these women are called handmaids, so as the title suggests. So we get to see the story of one particular handmaid, and through her we get to see the whole atmosphere of that time. I think the premise was really, really interesting. Once again, I thought it could develop more, and I kept waiting for something to happen. In a book like this, where suspense is being created, and there's an eerie atmosphere and anything could happen, and there's always a hint of something dangerous happening, something drastic happening, but even till the end it does not happen. So again, it leaves you wanting more. The entire book is a good reading experience, just the ending is a little bit disappointing. And we come to yet another disappointing book, which is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This was sitting in my Amazon wishlist since very, very long. and the blurb was so interesting, so I finally ordered it. It felt like a gothic fiction or something horror or something of that sort. So the basic story is that there are these two sisters, Constance, the elder one, and Mary, or known as Mary Cat throughout the book, the younger one. And they live with their uncle who's on a wheelchair in their big mansion, okay? And they are totally isolated from the society because apparently Constance a few years ago was accused of murdering all of the other family members who used to live there. And even though she was never proven guilty or anything, the society has totally stopped talking to them, contacting them, and they've also done the same. They don't wish to talk to anybody or anything. The book begins on a very strong note. Again, the suspense is built up very soon and very strongly. It catches your attention like this. And once again, all of that leads nowhere. So in the middle of the book, there's their cousin who comes to live with them. So that's interesting that, when nobody's talking to them, there's some cousin who comes to live with them and he wants to, help them out in something. So you think that something with a cousin would happen by the end. Nothing ends up happening in the story. There's one little suspense in the story, and I figured it out pretty early on, so even that did nothing for me. Overall, I would say that you can totally skip it. This does not develop into a gothic fiction, it does not develop into a horror story, it develops into absolutely nothing. Not even a murder mystery, nothing at all. See, I was not wrong when I said that this year has been a disappointment in terms of reading, because we are coming to another disappointment, which is A Little Life. My god. This book was everywhere on Bookstagram. And everyone was saying one thing about the book, which is that it is going to break your heart. And I love books that break my heart. Something to know about me. I love books that make me cry, that can make me shed actual tears. And it's some 800 pages or something, so I picked it up. Again, begins well. It follows the journey of 4 friends: Willem, Jude, Malcolm, and there's one other guy, I'm forgetting his name. It follows them from the time they are like in college till their old age, and it's an exploration of their friendship. And in the beginning you think that that's going to be central to the book, their friendship is going to be central to the book, but what ends up happening is that Jude, one of the friends, he ends up taking center stage in the story. So Jude has had a very traumatic past. I'll come to that in a minute. And so he grows up with a lot of trauma. He has gone through a lot of physical, sexual and mental abuse. And that has obviously affected him so much that now that he's an adult, he constantly self-harms. And his story, his backstory, as well as his self-harm and his struggle with those things and his struggle with loving himself, they make up for a very strong plot. And initially I was hooked to the book. I was flipping through the pages like this and I was like, oh, I totally get why people love it. Then what happened? In the other books I was saying that I was left wanting for more. In this book, something opposite happened. I think the author should have stopped at a point. So when she's talking about Jude's abuse, at one point she overdoes it so much that you stop sympathizing at all, because it starts feeling very unreal. And I get the point that she wanted to show that the extent of abuse that he faced. I get it, but then she did it, she overdid it, I think. Then we come to his self-harm. Once again, his descriptions of his self-harm are so triggering, honestly, and that's why they're very impactful as well. But once again, she overdoes it, and by the end you're like, okay, we get it. It's getting a little bit repetitive, it's getting annoying, and let's get to know more about Jude. Let's develop Jude a little bit more as a character or something. So one thing was this, that she overdid both of these things, that by the end I did not want to read more at all, because I felt nothing else is happening with the character at all. Then something with Jude and Willem happens by the end of the book, which made no sense to me, felt a little bit forced. I'm not saying because it could be a spoiler for people. And again, now there's one little bit of a surprise that happens in the book towards the very end. And because A Little Life is all over Bookstagram, I got to know it before I reached that point in the book. So even that didn't work for me. Overall, once again, I just had to drag through the last few chapters of the book, and it left me very, very disappointed. And if self-harm narratives, are triggers for you, you should absolutely skip it. Okay, another book, this is a Bookstagram favorite, which has also become one of my favorites, which is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And this is a series of 4 or 5 books. I have 4 of them, and I've read 2 of them this year, which is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This is the first one, and then we have Tales from the Cafe. So there's this cafe in Japan which lets people travel through time. So you can go ahead or back in time, but there are some conditions attached. So there's this one particular seat in the cafe where you have to sit, which will take you back through or forward in time. You have to sit there, but there's a ghost sitting on the chair, a ghost of a lady, and she gets up only once during the entire day, and only when she gets up can you sit on that seat, and you can't make her move away forcefully, right? Another thing is that once you're on that seat and once you've traveled through time, you cannot leave the chair. So with this comes another condition that you can only meet people who've been to the cafe in the past or who will be in the cafe to the time when you're traveling. And as the title suggests, you can only be in that another dimension till the time your coffee does not go cold. So there's this waitress who will pour the coffee. Only that waitress can pour the coffee, and you have to come back to the present before your coffee goes cold, or you will become the ghost sitting in the chair. Very, very interesting. Now, while all of this sounds very fun and lighthearted, what I really like is the stories. So there are, in both these books, we have different customers, different people coming to the cafe for different reasons to travel through time, and those reasons are really, really heartwarming. So we have people who have regrets, people who want to apologize. Oh, another condition, that you cannot change the present at all. No matter what you do when you travel in time, the present will not change. So this also brings in the question, then why would someone want to travel? And this is the thing, right? Sometimes we have regrets about the way we acted in the past. We just want to apologize to someone, or we lost someone close to us. We just want to meet them once again. All these are just lovely reasons to go back or forward in time. Very, very heartwarming, all of these stories of the different people who come into the cafe. And another thing that I really like is that the story also goes into the lives of the staff of the cafe. We get to know about the waitress and the owner and their own personal lives and their stories. Overall, very heartwarming books, and I'm looking forward to reading the other books in the series. Oh, another one that I read is again a fantasy novel, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Again, I don't have to tell you what it's about. I think everyone knows about The Hobbit, right? Again, I would not have picked it up myself because I was not in the mood of reading fantasy this year. Although now I'm really looking forward to, starting with my box set of the Game of Thrones. But yeah, The Hobbit was again prescribed to me during my post-graduation. Begins fun, and it's a fun read throughout. You get to meet different creatures. So The Hobbit is also a creature, and who is forcefully taken on an adventure. Feels like me if someone takes me on an adventure, because I'm a very homebound person. I don't like going out a lot. So could relate with The Hobbit. But yeah, he's forcefully taken on an adventure, and he knows nothing about anything, and he doesn't know how can he be of help or anything. But then slowly and gradually he becomes the lead person. He sees the one leading the whole adventure, the whole mission. So very interesting to see him develop as a character. Again, by the end it got a little bit repetitive, and I actually left the last few pages of the novel because I kind of knew what's going to happen. And I did not have patience to read it, but I will not say it's a bad book at all. If you're in the mood of reading a fantasy novel, you know, like you like exploring fantastical worlds, then yeah, you can go for The Hobbit. Okay, last but definitely not the least, um, is And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. You know, this is the book I am the most sad about because I was not expecting a Khaled Hosseini book to disappoint me. My first introduction to Khaled Hosseini was The Kite Runner, and that broke my heart in such a way, and it became my all-time favorite that I can't stop recommending it to people. If you come to me for a book recommendation, the book I'll recommend you first is going to be The Kite Runner. That was so impactful. So then I picked up A Thousand Splendid Suns by the same author, loved it a lot. So this was his third book, and I picked it up, and it really disappointed me. Once again, it begins in a classic Khalid Hosseini way. We are introduced to Pari and Abdullah. They are brother and sister. They belong from a very, very poor family, and they love each other a lot. Like, they are the center of each other's worlds. They can't live without each other. But they are forcefully separated at an age when Pari was so little that by the time she grew up, she forgot Abdullah. And throughout the novel, you feel like this is going to be a journey of Pari and Abdullah finding their way back to each other in this big wide world. And that does happen, but it only happens in the beginning and the end. In the middle of the book, we are given details about the stories of even secondary characters and even characters who appear once or twice. The book takes us into the history of all those characters and their families and where they are coming from, and you feel like, okay, it's going to have some significance to the story of Pari and Abdullah, but it does not. Then you feel like maybe it is of significance to discuss the struggles in Afghanistan, but even that does not happen. So yeah, nothing makes sense that why those things are discussed by the author. What you actually want to read is provided in very little quantity to you. As I said, only in the beginning, very, very strong. You get instantly attached to the siblings, and the end. But yeah, overall, not at all impactful. I was very, very sad that a Khalid Hosseini book left me disappointed. So these were the only books that I read this year. I was, of course, aiming to read more, but it's okay. We'll see next year how that goes. The another book that I'm aiming to finish by the time the year ends. So today it's 12th December. I still have some days left. I'm aiming at finishing Memoirs of a Geisha. This is a highly recommended book to me, and so far I'm actually loving it. So if I read it, I'll let you know, and that would be added to my wrap up. So yeah, those were all the books that I read. I hope next year I read more books, and more than that, I hope that next year I read more good books. Do let me know what all you read this year. What were your favorite books? What left you disappointed? Let me know all that in the comment section below. And I'll probably meet you next year now. Bye bye. And a very, very, very happy new year to all of you.